Hello my friends, and welcome to this little video where we're going to sit on the floor and I'm going to just answer some frequently asked questions. I've made a list and I'm sure that I've missed some frequently asked questions, but we're going to talk about all sorts of things. How to tighten the bow, tuning, changing strings, rehairing, how to put on my chin scarf, which I'm going to do right now, how often should I rosin the bow, what strings should I use, should I rent, should I buy, what about children, renting, buying, shoulder rest, how do you keep the shoulder rest on, case recommendations, how to put on a shoulder rest, how to hold the bow, how often should I practice, performance anxiety, music teacher stuff, what books do I use, how do you run your business, business tips, how do you get students, all those kind of things. So this might be I have no idea how long this video will be, and also it might be the first of many videos is what I'm trying to say. So let's just jump right in. So first of all, tightening the bow. Actually, you know what, we're not going to go in order because I need to put my chin rest scarf on. So here's my beautiful viola. By the way, a question I get often is, what brand of instrument do you have? And my beautiful viola is a JP Lucas viola. It is my beloved little instrument. And this instrument has made me who I am, I feel, along with the harp. It's like, I don't know, when you study music and you toil away with an instrument for your entire life, and you've had that instrument since you were 16 and you're now 33, almost 33, it's like, I just feel, I feel such an emotional connection to this instrument. And there's days where I want to smash it into a million pieces, and then there's days where I love you so much, and there's days where it's I really don't want to see you, and there's days where I'm I really love seeing you and I'm so grateful. So it's really funny. It definitely is a relationship. But anyway, yes, let me show you how to secure a chin rest scarf. By the way, I use a Whitner hypoallergenic side mount chin rest. So it's plastic and it sits on the side. They make them for violin and viola. It's a Whitner hypoallergenic side mount chin rest. And I do have it in my Amazon store, which is usually linked below in the description. So how to secure a scarf. You're going to need a scarf. This is basically from the men's department store. And it's like a little, suit scarf for those moments where you see a lady in distress and she needs a handkerchief, if you're a gentleman. So you're going to fold it in half, and then you're going to drape it over the instrument like this. So there's just a little bit off the side, and then you're going to take a rubber band, secure it, and then this top part folds over, and you can secure that. So, you can get scarves in all sorts of colors. I don't play in an orchestra, so there's no I don't need it to be black, or you probably don't want a crazy color if you're an orchestra. But I honestly don't even know if they would even let you use these in a professional orchestra. I just do because I find them more comfortable, and also as a makeup wearing person, I don't like to get makeup on the chin rest itself. So I usually swap these out, every day and just get a new one. So it's lovely. So there we go. Now maybe I go to the shoulder rest. So the shoulder rest that I use now and have been using for the last 5 years or so is this chin rest and this shoulder rest are the setup that I not require, but refer to students who are just beginning. I find that it works really, really well. So this is the Kuhn original shoulder rest. It's not the collapsible leg one. It's just the original shoulder rest, Kuhn original shoulder rest. And I have it on the smallest setting, and that's because I need it to sit up really high on the instrument itself. I have a whole video on how to put on a shoulder rest. It goes way more in depth. There's all sorts of different positions you can kind of put on. You can change the heights and all sorts of stuff for the legs, so you can always check that out. But for me, I kind of do best with my shoulder rest like so. It's a little shorter on this side, it's a little bit longer on that side. And then to secure it so that it doesn't fall off, you're gonna take another rubber band, put it on a leg, and hook it over like this. And then you're gonna take another rubber band, put it on the leg, and do this. And this is amazing. Your shoulder rest will not fall off. It is the best. So there you go. That's a great setup. And when you put your instrument up, you want to make sure that your body is not contorting in a crazy way. So good posture. Remember, your body's the first instrument. And then you're going to put your instrument up, and you want your setup to allow the instrument to sit 45-ish degrees off from your body, right? So this is way too far to the side. That means you have to bring your bow arm over here, and you want to keep your arms kind of in front of you like this. So I would recommend kind of having it like so. You don't want to be contorting yourself too much. So that's going to go into too many details. I just want to give you a brief overview of some of these things. So how much to tighten the bow? It depends on everyone's bow, because everyone's bow is a little bit different, and the tension on the hair changes with time. You want to rehair, by the way, you want to rehair your bow, I would say at least every year. If your bow is $50 to $60, that's the cost of a rehair, and most places won't rehair a bow that's $50 to $60. They'll just give you another cheapy bow. So it would be a good idea for you to, if you do want to just get rehairs, get a bow that's a little more expensive than that. Although when you're first starting, of course, you just do what you just get something, that's fine. So you want to tighten the bow enough that it still maintains a curve. If you look at the tip here, see how it's still got a curve there? If I over tighten it, it'll start to bow the other way. It'll start to bend the other way. So it's kind of bending this way. So you want to avoid it straightening out or going the other way. The other thing is that when you put the bow on the string in the middle and you apply a little bit of arm weight or weight, the stick isn't touching the hair. So if it was too loose, the stick and the hair, like this is very, very loose here, they're gonna stick together. I don't know if you can see that. So anyway, that will kind of depend from person to person, but I do notice that a lot of really high caliber players tend to be on the looser side of the bow, or it just kind of depends on what repertoire they're using. But I just noticed that a lot of like professional musicians and really high performance players, they tend to be on like the, if anything, maybe slightly looser side of the bow. I could be wrong, but that's been my impression over the years. So let's see, we've talked about how to tighten the bow. You want to change your strings at least every year as well. It depends on how much you're playing. So for people that play in the Philadelphia Orchestra, they probably change their strings like every 3 months maybe, and rehair their bow every 3 months. Whereas me, I try to do it every 6 months because I don't play professionally. I have started to do more recordings, and I'm interested in recording things, so I'm very concerned about my sound quality, and so that's why I've started to do it every 6 months, just because I'm also practicing quite a bit more and recording and everything and doing recitals and whatnot. So 6 months for me. What strings I use, I really like Vision Solo strings, but I've recently been playing the Eva Gold strings, and oh my gosh, those are my new favorite strings. The Eva Gold, I have no idea how much they are. I probably should know how much they are. I think they're pretty expensive. I forget how much they are, but I would highly recommend the Eva Gold. They are awesome. How much to rosin your bow and how to put on rosin. So let me show you my rosin. By the way, it's nice to have a little bag in your case with rosin. Nail clippers. I have two things of nail clippers for some reason. A lucky stone from a friend. Another thing of nail clippers for some reason I have two of these. These are the chin rest tools for the Whitner hyperallergenic chin rest. I have 3 orchestral mutes, a pencil, of course a pencil. I have a little, this is like from a paper clip. This is for those chin rests that don't, those chin rests that have like a really tiny little hole to like unwind or tighten. So when I was teaching in person, I always had this because a lot of my students, when they first got their violin, didn't have the Whitner chin rest on the violin, and so we would swap it out into something more comfortable like the Whitner, and I would have to use this little thing to help. So this is, they actually do make chin rest tools, so you can just buy one, but this is a paper clip. So I also have, oh here, this is a chin rest tool. It's tiny, little tiny chin rest tool, and a lucky penny, 1 cent. Really old 1 cent penny. So those are all the things that one should keep in their bag. Definitely have a pencil, that's always helpful. Please have nail clippers, a chin rest tightener, and rosin, and a lucky stone. And you should also have a cleaning cloth. A cleaning cloth is probably like a little handkerchief. Okay, and I will show you how to use the cleaning cloth, but I was talking about rosin. So the rosin I really like is the Andrea rosin, and I just use the Viola solo for my violin and viola. Since I predominantly play viola, I just use viola rosin, but when you, and you can see I've had it for a long time, so it creates this kind of like thing, and I probably could have worn it better, but you know, I just consciously always do it in like some kind of cross formation, but you could like wear it away in a little bit better way, I guess. But anyway, so you want to do this. 1, 2, 3. You could also do back and forth like this. 1, 2, 3, right? Things like that. You don't want to put too much rosin on, and Andrea rosin, what you don't want to do, by the way, is like scrubbing. When you first start rosin, you might need to kind of scrub it like that, but it's better to just do nice long even strokes like this. Notice how I'm putting the bow on top of the rosin and not the rosin on top of the bow, because it's, if my hand falls off and falls onto the hair, then my hand oils and whatnot will get on the hair, so it's, you don't want to touch the hair. So I just find like this is a little bit more stable. My rosin, I usually put on maybe 5 or 6 strokes of rosin every day, but there's been many times where I've just like forgotten to put on rosin, and you know, it's like that extra step that you're like, I really don't want to put on rosin. But anyway, let's see what else. I feel like I'm talking to you too fast. Oh, I just want to go through all these questions so that we get to everything. So tuning. Okay, so one of the other essentials for studying the violin and viola is having a really good metronome tuner. Yes, you can have an app, but in your lesson, if you use your phone, you can't use your tuner on your phone because you're using your phone for your lesson, right? So I have like 3 of these. These are the Korg TM50 tuner metronome combinations, and you need to just always have this on your music stand, always have it on and ready to go. It's your little compass. And I always tune to 441, and you can see the calibration over here on the side. So 441 is just because all of my professors over the years have tuned to 441, but 440 is also standard. The tuning for A is going to vary from where you are in the world. Like a lot of people in Asia, they tend to tune a little bit sharper. So maybe 441, 442, things like that, maybe even higher, I forget, it's been a while. And then, you know, like here in the US, 440 and 441, I would say is really common. So, but you know what, you also want to just check the piano. So if you do play with the piano, you would take your tuner to the piano and play A and see if it's tuned to 440 or 441. And that also varies. So, you know, a lot of times pianos will be tuned to 440 or 441, whatever it is. But in orchestra, it's really the oboe that will tune. And I know that a lot of oboe players are really adamant about keeping the pitch lower. It's harder for them for, I don't know why, but I think that it's a pain to be sharper and sharper and sharper. So the oboe is the one that tunes the orchestra. And so the oboes tend to probably keep it around 440 or 441, at least I would assume here in the US. But anyway, it's a long answer. You've got me off on a tangent, I suppose. But just know that there's a range of pitch for A. Let's see. We talked about chin rests and rehairs and all that kind of thing. Okay, so let's talk about just case recommendations really quickly. So this case that I have right here is a double case. It holds a violin and a viola, and I'm pretty sure that you can have double violin cases. You could have maybe double viola cases, or you could have a violin and viola, which is pretty common. This is by the brand Babolat. And Babolat is awesome. It is a heavy case, so I don't like, using it. I wouldn't be excited about running around town with this case. So as far as a lighter case for a single instrument, I really like BAM. I don't know if BAM actually makes double cases, but BAM cases are awesome. I've had a BAM case since I've had this viola, so like 15 years, over 15 years I've had a BAM case, and it's been all over the world with me and in many, many, many airplanes. Sadly, I think the last time, or one of the last times that I was traveling with my BAM case, and it is really old, my case was up in the bins, and someone was shoving their suitcase I don't know what happened, but my case got damaged. It cracked on the side that's over here, and it's a carbon fiber case, and it also got dinged in multiple places. So I was so horrified that I had no words. I was like so but the case did what it was supposed to do, and it protected my instrument. My instrument was perfectly fine. And so instead of getting a new BAM case, because they're maybe $700, I forget how much they are now, but I'm just gonna get a BAM case cover, and they are water resistant, and I think they just help insulate the case. So I'm gonna get a BAM, what are they called? A case hoodie. BAM cases are super light, so you can run around town with your BAM case and it's not gonna make your arm fall off. You can also wear it as a backpack, and it's really awesome. So those are my recommendations. Babolat cases are really great, and I really like BAM cases. Those are the only cases I can comment on, because those are the only cases that I have. So any other kind of instrument stuff before we talk about buying and renting and all that kind of thing? Okay, so let's talk about the children aspect side, as far as renting or buying an instrument. And it's going to depend on your budget and if there's a store nearby that will do this. But when your child is first starting out to play the violin or viola, usually the school will kind of handle the instrument process. So your child will just be kind of renting something through the school for a pretty reasonable rate. But if your child starts to really enjoy the instrument, then I would really highly recommend, if it's going to depend on your child and their responsibility level, and if you can find a store that does this. David Michie in the city does, and I always have David Michie's Violin shop linked on my videos in the description. You can always call them because they do ship across the US. But what's great about David, and potentially another store that you can find in your area, is that you would basically buy the instrument, even if it's a half size instrument, but you have that value of the instrument to put to the next size up, and then the next size up, and then a full size instrument. And then as they progress through middle school and high school, and you want to reward them with a better instrument, maybe every year or every couple years, you retain that value. Whereas like if you just buy a $700 student instrument, then what are you going to do with that instrument? You're going to hope that somebody will buy it, right? Perhaps. Or you'll just always have that $700 instrument. But if you were to pay $700, for example, on like a starter violin outfit at David's, for example, David Michie's Violins, you would retain that with years to come, so that you could, by the time they finish high school and you've upgraded several times, they might have a $5,000 violin and you've never wasted any money. And that kind of is the same way with adult beginners, is that if you are kind of like testing the waters, you could maybe get something that's really inexpensive and just kind of try it out for a few months. But the only problem with getting a really inexpensive instrument to like learn on initially and see if you like the instrument is that it's not going to sound very good, and it's going to be not made as well, so it will be harder to play. And yes, a professional can make a really crappy violin sound good because they are like crazy amazing players. So anybody that's like comparing a $50 violin to like a $500,000 violin, you know, they have mad skills on the instrument. They can make anything sound good. But when you're first starting out, it's just really helpful to have a tool that is easy to work with and sounds reasonably good, so that you can learn without like learning on an instrument that sounds like this and it's just hard to deal with. So I will kind of let you kind of figure that side of the spectrum out, but just know that if you are to get a really cheap instrument that's, you know, under $500, for example, you know, like you just don't know what you necessarily will be working with. Whereas if you have the money and you want to, you know that you already like the violin, you could buy an instrument from a store that will allow you to upgrade with time. Like I keep saying about David's, is that let's say you buy an instrument from them for a $1,500 violin case bow. You always have that. So after a year or two of studying, you can then upgrade to something better, and you don't have to worry about selling it. You never lose your instruments, you know, the money that you put into it. So that's always just really helpful. I don't know if that was helpful or not. Maybe that was confusing because it kind of all came out really quickly, but there's lots of articles you can read. So you can always just like ask Google your question, and there'll be many different articles that have been really succinctly written to help you with this process. But it just honestly depends on your budget and also your interest level, your long-term interest level as well. So do watch out if you decide to rent that you don't get roped into a contract that says that you must rent for a year, you know, because then what if you decide that you don't like the violin and you're like roped into a contract for a year or 6 months or however long it is. So just watch out for the duration of the contract when you're renting. So yeah, I should have like brought a cup of tea with me. I crazily don't have a cup of tea nearby. But other questions I frequently get asked is how to practice, how often should you practice, what to practice, performance anxiety, and music teacher stuff. So maybe we talk about the practice side real quick. It's always better to practice more frequently rather than just practicing for an hour once a week. It's better to kind of break it up. It's the same thing with exercise. It's about daily movement, and with daily movement you become stronger, and then you can maybe increase and vary the kind of exercise that you do, but it has to start simply with just moving every day. And then you can also kind of go into other sides, like what are you eating? Do you drink enough water? Do you over caffeinate? Do you over consume sugar? All those kinds of things. So there's kind of like a variedness on the diet and exercise spectrum. But when it comes to your instrument, you should practice, I would say at least try to do 30 minutes, like 5 out of 7 days. That would be a really good, or maybe just 15 to 30 minutes would be fine to just start out, and just set a timer. Practice for that set amount of time, 5 out of 7 days. I'm just about to start something with my studio called the Gold Star Game. And yes, I teach a lot of adults, but we all love games and it has to do with Gold Star. So I might make a video about, because I always say you get a Gold Star. So I might make a video on the Gold Star Game, which will be kind of a fun thing to do. But when you practice, part of your practice when you first start practicing is that you want to make sure that you're addressing your own posture and form and that you're setting yourself up correctly. So it's kind of the same thing with lifting weights even. You want to make sure that you don't injure yourself and make your life harder than it needs to be by lifting weights with bad form, because you are putting pressure on your body in ways that you shouldn't and will lead to injury. And it's the same thing with the violin and viola. So part of your warm-up needs to include some thoughtfulness about your instrument position, your hand, your bow, the way that you're sitting, perhaps breathing, doing some open strings, doing some little finger exercises, and then doing some finger strengthening, like Schrodiak etudes are really, really excellent to do that. But the thing with Schrodiak is that you want to be really mindful that you're not repeatedly practicing things out of tune. At least when you're first starting, you're going to have a wide range of pitch, but over time you can start to decrease it. So if you have your trusty tuner on the music stand, you can kind of see your range of pitch. And especially if part of your warm-up is just addressed on your intonation, which it should be, just a few minutes of just focusing on intonation and seeing if you can kind of hone things, giving your fingers some time for muscle memory, then that will translate into the other things. So you're kind of building up from the ground up. And then doing some simple little scales would be good. But if you do your Schrodiak, you've got your kind of almost scalar stuff going on in your finger strengthening. There's all sorts of things you can do with Schrodiak, and I have like many playlists of all the things you can do with Schrodiak. So you can always check those out in my playlists section or join the Patreon community, because every week we go through a different little etude. And then let's say you're only practicing for 15 minutes. You've done your little time addressing your form, you've done some finger strengthening exercises, you've paid a little attention to your bow and your sound and your intonation. Then you could play something in a specific key that you're working on with your teacher perhaps. You could practice sight reading. You could do some like little exercise books to help you with reading. But part of the practice should be also just having some fun. So it just kind of is going to depend on what it is that you're working on. But I would say the most important thing to start off your practice should be that time to address your form and your setup and those basic building blocks of the instrument. And then you can go on to bigger and greater things from there, but you have a good foundation. So yeah, performance anxiety. This is something that I struggle with. A lot of musicians and athletes and humans struggle with performance anxiety. And I think one of the things, there's so many things that I'm noticing that help with performance anxiety. And the first thing is to not feel bad about it. Don't feel bad if you feel nervous and anxious about it, because it's just, that's what happens. That's just what happens. And you don't have to feel guilty and bad about it. So just know that that is what's happening and it's okay. That's the first starting place. And then from there, with time and practice performing, you can start to become more comfortable with just the doing of it. And I would do it in tiny little baby steps. So for example, if you get nervous just recording yourself, right? All of a sudden there's that element of being on the spot. In your practice, at the end of your practice, just put your phone on video and do a little practice performance for yourself. Try taking some breaths before you begin. You can calm yourself by actually prolonging the exhale. So maybe taking 3 very deep inhales and twice as long exhales before you begin. Your little performance might actually help you to calm down. And the other thing that you could do just off the top is that there's this like switch that we have to kind of go back and forth between as humans, which is our thinking mind, the mind that's thinking about what it is that we're doing. And I know for me, when I'm performing, there's this part of me that's like, analyzing what I'm doing while I'm doing it, and it takes a large percentage of my thinking power away from what it is I'm doing. If there's like 50% of my mind is now deciding to like analyze myself while I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't have that 50% to focus on what it is that I'm doing. So there's this switch between the thinking mind and our feeling space. And as musicians and artists, we also have to make sure that we're communicating things with like meaning, with feeling behind it. So if you take a moment to just try to understand and comprehend what it is that you're playing, what is the piece? What is the vibe of the piece? Is it a calming and relaxing piece? Is it like filled with intensity and energy, for example? You know, those are like two opposing things. So if you're just not even thinking about that, your interpretation, like an actor, is not quite there. You're just reading the words on the page rather than communicating the words on the page. So if you focus on, in your performance, trying to communicate the music, then you're focused more on the music and you're not focused on what it is that you're doing and analyzing what you're doing and then the other people in the room and whatever it is. That takes a lot of practice though, right? And so just know that I think some of the most seasoned performers, they've really honed their sense of poise over many years. Children don't necessarily, they're not like necessarily thinking about all of those things. They're just having fun doing it. And so they have that natural focus and playfulness, right? That's the other thing I'm noticing with myself, is that I tend to take things too seriously. Like I'm too serious about what it is that I'm doing, and I need to kind of like lighten up a little bit and just have more fun with the process and just have a lightheartedness about it, so that there's a sense of ease behind what I'm doing, whether it's an intense piece or a more relaxing piece, for example. So I could talk to you about that for a long time. We have actually a virtual studio circle every month, which is part of the Patreon community, and it's just a time where we gather together every month, the last Friday of the month at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, to just practice performing for a group that's very, very kind and comforting and will like be there for you while you practice crashing and burning or flying. You know, it just depends. So, and since we're all learning and we're all going through that process, it's like the nicest, kindest, sweetest community. And you can also practice playing without your video on to just kind of see how that does, or you can practice, of course, with your video on. Most of us have been practicing with the video on. It's a very small community, but it's just something that I think we all need to practice. Music is a study that really strengthens your soul in so many ways. It's like, you know, I listen to a lot of athletes talk about their what they're doing in their lives, and it is also an exercise in building your character and strengthening your soul. And it's just a skill that, you know, you just you don't really realize getting into it. You're like, oh, I just want to play the violin, or I just want to play the viola, or I just want to like run, you know, or I want to do jujitsu, or whatever it is that you want to play golf, or whatever it is. And you're like, wow, this actually is taking all of myself to do this one skill. So it's kind of fun in that way. But moving on to the last thing, which is some music teacher stuff and just like business side of the spectrum and what books I like to use. I really think it's important, and it does take time, by the way, to become a good music teacher. So I just think that it's taken me a long time to like even find the books that I really like, because everybody is going to be different. So if you're listening to this and you're also a music teacher, you might have your own books that you really like too, and that's awesome. So I'm not saying that my books are the books that you must use or anything. These are the books that I tend to really like, and they all live in this this cabinet. So the upper cabinet is all my violin books. These are all viola, and these are kind of like a mix of things here and there. So I'm sorry. These are my active teaching books up here, and the top one is, so I have violin and viola books up here. These are what I'm actively teaching with. This one is the violin, and this one is the viola. What am I saying? So yeah, it's a clothing dresser, and it is filled with books. I think that it's probably going to have to be a separate video, but having a good technical methodology books actually would be really good. So of course the standard etudes like Schradieck and Sevchik and Wolfhart and the melodious double stops and the scales books and all those kinds of things are really good. But sometimes that's like hard when you're first starting out. It's not like takes a few years sometimes to really just get to. When you're a beginner, it just depends on your level of beginning. But just having some simple books to practice reading are really good. The hour books are really good. The essential element books are really good. I'm probably forgetting some of them. But anyway, for the violin, also having some really good methodology series and just fun books. So of course the Suzuki books are great. They have great repertoire in them. And then I really also like the Royal Conservatory of Music methodology series. I like the Solos for Young Violinists methodology series. For fun books, I like the Waltz books by Bill Matheson. And I also love the Cantigas books. I love the Fiddler's Fake book. I love just like fiddle books in general. I'm definitely forgetting things. And for viola, it's very similar, I would say. Although some of those things don't really exist, sadly, for the viola, like the Hour books, the Leopold Auer Graded Course of Violin Playing books don't exist for the viola, which is really sad. The Super Studies books are really good, filled with little etudes. I really like the Barbara Barber series, so the solos for young violinists or violas and scales are really good. I don't know, it'll have to be a separate video. Some teaching tips would be definitely, I have a whole binder of like various things in the binder of like my business side of the spectrum, and there's one section where it's just lesson plans for each individual student, and I have kept them for years and years and years. So I have like a stack of my lesson plans over the years, and it's like a progression of, you know, starting people from the very beginning until where they are, so you can kind of look back and see what you've done. So planning the lesson is really a good idea, and to plan it in detail and to plan it based off of how much time you're going to spend on things too is really helpful, so that you give the student time to go through everything and also enjoy the process and have fun. Your music lesson is often a time of like joy and relaxation and learning and fun, and something that's completely different from the regular day-to-day life of your student. And so it shouldn't be necessarily too serious. It's a serious in the fact that you do get through everything that you need to do, but there's like a lightheartedness about it, and when you are having fun, you learn better. So part of the being a good music teacher, I feel, is to kind of have that sense of joy and openness and learning, and not like expecting your student to know everything, because that's your job, is to teach the student and to give them like a little, I like to call it like a little baby bird bite to digest and learn and understand, and then you give them another bite, and then they digest and they learn, and then so they are like always learning, you know, so that they get everything that they need to get basically. They're not missing out, they're not missing something. So there needs to be a sense of openness between the student and the teacher, so that the teacher understands and knows what the student doesn't understand, and they can then teach them better. So anyway, oh my gosh, it's like there's so much that I could talk to you about with being a music teacher, but I have several sections in my teaching binder. One of them is just simply having like an account sheet of the lessons for the month of each student and the lessons I'm expecting them to have, if there's an adjustment in that, and if they've paid, what they owe and if they've paid, and I do that every month. And then because I do invite guest artists and guest teachers to come work with us every month, In addition, I have to charge a little fee for that. So I, will list the teacher, the guest teacher that I invite to the studio, and how much I paid them, and then how much, all those other people had to pay, and if they've paid, and how many people there are, and all that kind of thing. So I do keep track of the accounts. In a section, I have my students' goals. So at the beginning of the year, we take a little bit of time to just kind of like set some fun goals and see, and it can change, but it's just kind of good to have a little goals section. The first part of my teaching book is the things that I've, like little exercises, and like, actually I'm gonna write a book one day of just like, because I usually give my students like, here's the stuff we're gonna be going over, just things that I've like written out and whatnot, the basic things that we're gonna learn. But I'm gonna turn it into a fun book one day and have an artist like do some drawings and have fabulous things. It'll be fun. So that is my work in progress, is basically the book, the teaching book that I'll be creating in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's in the front. And then I also have my group class outlines. So I do teach 2 group classes every month, and I plan those, and they're progressive. And sometimes we experiment and do fun little things. So I have the outlines for that. I have the outlines for my virtual studio circles, which is our practice performance classes. But we often do have kind of a theme that we talk about and have a little discussion time. So I have those, and I forget if I'm missing something, but anyway, it's really helpful to have like a actual binder of various things that you are actively working on in your studio. And definitely having lesson plans is a really, really good idea. For the business side, I would just say that you need to find a really good like accountant who can help you set up your business, because what you don't want is to have like all of your income going into your personal checking account. You need to have a business checking account, but you also need a business license, and then you have to figure out how to deal with taxes and all of that kind of thing. Like, it is quite involved. And you want to make sure that you start saving for retirement and all of those kinds of things as well. And so I would just say that there's videos that you can actually watch on how to set up a business, but having a good accountant is really, 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 really essential. I feel, because as musicians, we've like spent our whole lives in a practice room studying and practicing, and we don't necessarily know the first thing about business. We take like a 1 semester class on the music business, but we don't necessarily, it's like a general class. So I would definitely say, you need to hire some help along your way. So anyway, I hope this was interesting. This was a really, really long video. Oh my gosh. If you have any other questions, please post them below. And if you like these kind of videos where we just kind of sit down and talk about frequently asked questions, because I know that I did miss some questions for sure. If you're interested in joining any of the fun community things that we have going on, I would really love for you to reach out. And also, if you've ever been interested in just contacting me for lessons at all, I would love, 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 love for you to reach out. I don't always have space available, but sometimes I do. And so even if you're just kind of wanting a lesson or two, that would be lovely to hear from you. Or you can just go to my website, which is violinviolamasterclass.com, which is linked below in the description. I also have a really lovely Patreon community, and on the Patreon community, I post weekly videos there, which eventually do trickle out like 6 months later on YouTube. But we have weekly posts as well. Maybe not always weekly, but I would say a couple posts every month that are going over what's going on in the studio. We do violin group classes there every other Thursday evening on Zoom, and the virtual studio circle practice performance, gathering the last Friday of the month. And I also organize guest artists to come work with us, Alexander Technique teachers, musicians that are active in their field and teachers that are active in their field to come and shed their wisdom on the studio. And that's one of the greatest things about music and being a music teacher, I would say, is that, especially if you really love people, it is like an amazing attractor of awesome people in your life. Just the people that music will bring into your life are just so magical. And so I would definitely encourage you to just connect with other musicians, and your world will just open up in a glorious and magical way. So you guys, thank you for watching and listening, and I will hopefully see you soon. I will definitely see you soon on YouTube and Patreon for sure. By the way, it's patreon.com/violin viola masterclass if you'd like to check that out, which is also linked below. And with that, you guys, I'm gonna love and leave you. I have to go practice. I have so much to practice. I had my first rehearsal with my pianist since 2015. I haven't done a recital since 2015. Right now it's 2022, so it's been a long time. I've been in this kind of like chrysalis phase. I did not want to perform, and I needed to kind of like take a little step back from performing and just having fun. I needed to just have fun with music. That's probably going to be a video at some point, is like burnout and what it's like to transition into university and then in the real world and all that kind of thing. So anyways, you guys, I think I will love and leave you. I'll see you all very soon. Thanks for watching.